Hello everyone and welcome to part 9 of the Skyline project. During this video we'll be doing a lot of auto body work and getting one step closer to adding plasticine to this little clay car.
Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well, and thank you for tuning into Moose Motion. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new, and be sure you have your post notifications turned on so you don't miss any of the new content. Anyway, thank you for your support, it's highly appreciated.
So up first and foremost, we're going to fix some, roof lines here because, I took the car's roof to a belt sander to kind of, for one, save some time and fix that roof line just a little bit to make it a little sharper because it wasn't quite looking, skyline-y enough, if that's a word. It's definitely not a word, but we're going to just say it is for this sake because it didn't quite have the right shape, so I decided to take things back quite a bit with some power tools just to save a little bit of time with, hand sanding would have taken several hours. In this case, it only took a couple of minutes, just kind of cleaning up the edges, making them a little more round off, basically, not quite as sharp as before, which, is a lot less work than trying to do it all by hand. Which brings us one step closer to, just kind of filling in a couple low spots on the body here, as well as the hood. Gonna fix up a couple low spots on that, and a couple of little lines aren't quite, perfect, so we're going to touch those up while we're here as well. That way we have multiple things to throw in the oven, and we're not wasting any time with, our power by reheating the oven a bunch of times more than we need to. There comes a point, too, where, you also have to just kind of get things baked so you're not constantly trying to reshape things for time-wise. But for the most part, I try to be as efficient as possible, so that way you can just throw a bunch of things in there, and that way you're not sitting around waiting for a bunch of things to, cool down or be in the oven, and then you're just kind of sitting there waiting for, stuff to come out, and then I can't film for the next few minutes, which kind of sucks, which is part of the reason why this video has perhaps taken a little longer than usual, mainly because there is a little bit more, wait time in between layers and baking things, unfortunately. However, it is getting pretty close to being ready for plasticine at this point. I'm going to have to dig out some steering components here very soon, which I will probably have to order a bunch of parts, and I'll probably have to find a cop car to order for future hot pursuits, because that sounds like a lot of fun for, stop motion projects in particular, to be honest. So one thing I wanted to do as well is just kind of beef up the fenders on the car, because this is technically just the frame. I noticed the Skyline's body, the fenders kind of stick out a little bit more than the door. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that the fenders were more of a high spot than the actual door. Then, of course, you want to kind of make sure that your side skirts are a little bit more level as well. And also make sure that hole is clear for your dirty side exhaust for future, really loud noises. Now at this point in the project, we're just going to kind of fix up a couple little low spots as well as uneven areas that I kind of noticed I didn't like in particular, like the fenders were a little too open in some areas, as well as fix some, damage from the belt sander, as well as hand sanding. The pillars are clearly not in good shape anymore. Make sure your hood's going to fit nice and clear as well inside that actual space. And then we're going to move on to, making that front clip, which was quite a difficult process as well, because obviously that's going to be done after the touch-up paint. But at any rate, the front clip is more important because we've seen the paint process happen before on this car. But the front clip is not exactly an easy task. I don't recommend this for any beginners in particular. So bear in mind, if you're ever going to do a twin turbo setup to full detail, it kind of sucks to work with. And probably reality as well as, small scale modeling, especially when you're making everything by hand. But the reason the front bumper has to be essentially removable is because I would like the engine to be, removable as well for future, garage scenes when the car is being worked on by mini clay characters. So that's the main reason we want the engine to be pulled out. So therefore, in this case, the front bumper has to be removable as well. So how I'm going to essentially accomplish that is by making a couple studs in the actual car body, by drilling a couple holes and then just running some armature wire through it, and then basically poking it into the nice soft oven baked clay for our frame for the front bumper so far, and then just kind of sculpting and evening things out best I can, and then just gently peeling it off and then baking the actual front bumper. And then we're going to basically just kind of reattach it at that point, and it actually worked out quite well, to be quite honest. I'm surprised it worked as well as it did, especially once we put on the plasticine layer. It won't have any issues on coming off at that point, I would imagine. The only thing that kind of sucks is that I'm basically going to probably have to use a scalpel every time to pull the engine out to, well, remove the front bumper, unfortunately. And on a side note, I figured it only made sense to quickly sculpt out the front headlight assembly while the front clay was still soft, because unfortunately the signal light area is going to have to be carved out because, well, that's already baked. And now we have the final result of the studs. As you can see, it actually fits quite well and stays in place pretty decently. Apart from the obvious color, well, difference, because it's quite thin in comparison to the rest of the car, it works quite well, actually, and I was honestly kind of expecting it not to work as well as it did, but I'm quite happy that it did work out as well as it did, because I figured that was going to be much more of a headache than it actually was. So that means, well, we can basically move on to carving out our little signal light area here, which I unfortunately did kind of mess up a little bit, and I do have to do some extra baking on the actual car body now again, but that's, you know, minor in comparison to, well, the front bumper assembly essentially not working and then having to think and re-engineer from scratch. That would have sucked. So at this point, we're just going to do a couple little cleanup jobs on that front bumper, make it a little bit more presentable, get rid of all the extra little excess clay that's just a little too hard to deal with when, well, it's all soft. So now we can kind of clean up the edges essentially, make it look a little bit more clean and nice and smooth, and what an actual bumper probably should look like, at least the frame of it. And then we're just going to make a couple small parts, and then we'll do a quick build rundown for next time. And hello again, my dear viewers, and thank you for sticking around to the very end of the video. And if you haven't already, be sure to smash that like button, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new, and comment below what you think of the project so far. At any rate, the body as well as the body lines at this point of the car are, well, kind of starting to look unmistakably a lot more like a Skyline than, well, just a chunk of clay. However, probably the biggest accomplishment during this video was, well, that front clip in particular, now that it's all nice and, well, actually molded, and as well, it can be removed. Nice and easily pops back on too, which is definitely a big weight off my shoulders personally, so that way this engine can be basically wrapped up and finished, and I don't really have to worry about any other little parts at this point in regards to getting things in the way, apart from maybe touching up this hood just a little bit because it needs a little bit more massaging. So probably what we'll work on next time is adding a little bit more detail underneath that hood, adding the brake booster and various other little small mechanical components, as well as probably painting this, well, actual frame up for, well, preparation for plasticine. So I'm gonna have to dig out some steering components very soon. At any rate, you made it this far in the video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you didn't. At any rate, that's enough for me. Till next time, take it easy.